Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Take 5, which is the podcast where we look at one of the greats of cinema, take 5 films that they have done, and then break each of those films down one by one. We started this podcast off by doing Robert De Niro. We did 5 films by Robert De Niro, of course, and then moved on to Billy Wilder, and now we're doing the capstone of Billy Wilder today, which is The Apartment. The previous Billy Wilder films that we did were Ninotchka, Sunset Boulevard, Ace in the Hole, and Some Like It Hot. And today we end with The Apartment, the Immortal Best Picture winner by Billy Wilder, and a really, really, really good movie. My name is Ray Martindale.
I'm Austin Luger.
And let's take 5.
Ooh, we got a catchphrase.
I know.
It's the title.
It's the title. That's the tagline for the series, Let's Take 5.
It's the title.
So so when we started off this podcast, we decided to pick someone that we really enjoyed first that was like a mutual, let's do Robert De Niro. It's easy, it's accessible. Mm-hmm. And then we were now sort of switching back and forth on our picks for who we're doing, more or less. And you picked Billy Wilder, and we put to compile the 5 films. That's the agreement that we usually have, that we're going to do this. But you pretty much picked all these on your own, which was fine with me because while he is great, he's not someone I'm seen a lot of. So why these 5 films?
These 5 films, I think, really showed the range that Billy Wilder had. As I mentioned in a previous episode, I discovered Billy Wilder after I watched his films, basically. I kept watching these amazing films I got from the library, and then only later connected that it was the same guy who made them all. And they were so different. I'm like, how could the guy who made Something Like It Hot make Double Indemnity?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to show his range. We showed him as a screenwriter. We showed him as a fantastic comedian. We showed his noir side. We showed his very cynical side. And now I think we have his most heartwarming side.
In a way. The Apartment was a film that I hadn't seen prior to doing the podcast, which I'm ashamed. Austin tells me I don't need to be ashamed of this.
It's okay. Actually,
Billy Wilder is not actually a director that I've actually spent a lot of time around. I mean, I've always been in the shadow of his greatness. He's the type of person that you lie to your friends about the films that you've seen of theirs. Okay, I spent a long portion of my life, for instance, lying that I've seen all about jazz or all that jazz.
As of this recording, you still haven't seen it.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I still lie about that film. If any of my friends are listening to this podcast, I just finally come clean.
I have tried to watch this with you weeks in a row now,
but I watched Last Crusade instead.
I know.
So like this Billy Wilder, I've always stood in that shadow. And I used to with Kurosawa, for that matter. So Billy Wilder's probably the other guy. I mean, I was always loved Sunset Boulevard, which I talked about on the previous podcast, or one of the previous podcasts. But coming to The Apartment for the first time, this, to me, was a flawless film. Shot for shot, flawless film. It was so nuanced, so intricate, so perfect. It was a filet mignon of a film. Totally deserving of the Best Picture, the Best Picture that it did win. And, this was like right after Some Like It Hot that he did. I mean, the fact that he was creating these great stories like an assembly line, it's just unbelievable. Man, I love this movie.
And it's the same writer as Something Like It Hot as well. It's Billy Wilder and his collaborator, I.L. Diamond.
Yeah.
And The Apartment it's incredible. He's once again teaming up with Jack Lemmon, who was in Something Like It Hot. And it is one of the saddest romance stories.
It is, to the point where I don't think you can call it a romance story. Without knowing the plot, I mean, it starts off very funny. I mean, very, very funny. You see this amazing sort of panoramic shot of this entire building before they invented cubicles. And you see all these desks where he's a working man that's trying to move up in the company by allowing the executives at the company to use his apartment to take their affairs to. And even the neighbor, who's a doctor, thinks that he is having sex with all these different women, but in reality he's actually outside waiting for them to leave his apartment so he can come back and hoping one day he'll move up into the company. I'll get more into this later, but I call it, we're calling this movie romantic, right? But that's weird, right? It's hilarious, but it's like the romance here is kind of perverted.
Well, it is in many ways, and watching it this time, even though I think it still qualifies as a romance. We'll get into the Shirley MacLaine character and the love triangle that is in the film. It is, in more ways, is a film about inner love. It's about kind of finding respect for yourself and finding hope for yourself in a world that is very difficult in many ways.
Yeah, and I think it helps that takes place during Christmas time. So it's going on at Christmas time, and what's the one time a year where being alone is... I mean, the being with people brings you so much joy during Christmas time, and being alone brings you so much sorrow and emptiness. And as Roger Ebert refers to in his great movies, I believe it's Great Movies 1, where he actually has the apartment in there, he mentions that when you're alone on Christmas, it's like you're constantly reminded, and emphasis is placed on all those promises in your childhood that went unfulfilled, which I just thought was a beautiful passage. Ebert was obviously an incredible writer, but that got me thinking about how sad this movie is. It is a comedy, but it's so sad. Naturally, there's going to be funny. The premise is funny enough. Like if I said I'm going to write a movie, and this is what's going to happen, and they're using his apartments for this circumstance, that would almost seem like an entire idea of a film in and of itself, without adding any of the complications that come with this later.
Well, that could be a very Neil Simon-like play.
Yes, which is the direction I thought it was going in. Until you want to talk about the bombshell plot point, right?
Well, we have, I thought it always sad at the beginning, because it is funny and it is Jack Lemmon, he's doing his neurotic shtick, but I felt so much sympathy for him in the beginning as he's stuck out in the cold and he can't even go home.
Yeah.
You look at the psychological hierarchy of needs, and shelter is one of them, and he doesn't have onus for his own home.
Yeah.
And for most of the film, he only has one key to his home, and so he doesn't have the opportunity to stop them from being his home.
Yeah.
He has to wait for someone to leave it under the mat.
And he's got to worry about double booking.
Double booking. It's a incredible stress in his life. The neighbors are worried about the music being too loud. He is constantly undersupplied.
He's got to keep the house stocked with food and liquor.
Yeah. According to their needs.
According to their needs.
Not
right?
his.
And at this point, all the promises of him moving up in the company have gone unfulfilled.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a thing, too. And also, you look out at all the people who aren't moving up in the company. So you get also, keep using this word, but you get a cynical look at the workplace and the working man, right? Because you see all these people out there, and they're just busting their ass. And he even admits he's not staying late because he's working hard. He stays late because his apartment's not ready for him to get home yet. And, I mean, we're talking, this shot is really impressive of all these people working. It's a huge room. But he's the one that's going to get the office because he's letting his superiors go have an affair. Like that, ugh.
And what's amazing to me about the character is that I don't see him as particularly ambitious, even though we're describing him as looking for the promotion. I think he's just such a passively nice guy that if someone asked to borrow his apartment, he would, and then they say, "Oh, I'll give you the promotion you need," and he'd go, "Oh." Like, he almost wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely think it comes more out of passivity, but it also, too, I do think there is something there that's trying to make him move up because...
He's so sad in his job.
True, but I don't think you really care about that then, do you? I mean, it almost seems like... I don't know. Maybe that has something to do, certainly, but... I don't feel like his arc really works as well, too, if he wasn't trying to get the promotions.
Well, at that point, he's looking for validation for how miserable his life is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. So there's a character that we meet, the Shirley MacLaine character who works as, we're going to get into, again, the working man here. She's the elevator. She works the elevator. She's an elevator. No one who living today has ever seen one of these. But they're well, not living today, but this generation of people, our generation of people, an elevator assistant who's pushing on the floors in the building where everyone works, and that's what she does. So there is definitely a status thing here because she is beneath a receptionist because she didn't go to reception school, which ends up being a point in the movie that they focus on. She wasn't even fit to be a receptionist. She works the elevator. And what
she's even more ignored in that position. People either ignore her, and she talks about how no one even takes their hat off as a courtesy.
Unless they're slapping her ass.
Yeah, and harassing her.
Yeah.
And it's awful.
Yeah,
and they always kind of, and except for the few scenes in the elevator where it's just the two of them, Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine, it's just crowded. It's awful. It's unappreciated. And also, there's a reason why that job doesn't exist today. It's unnecessary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a completely unnecessary job.
Yeah.
Good point. But, the big boss says that we're talking the top CEO tells Baxter, C.C. Baxter is the character's name, tells him that he wants to use his apartment. So he's got to reschedule everybody because the big boss wants him. And he offers him, and he's sick too. He has a cold because he's been waiting outside in the cold for his friends his bosses to finish up his apartment. And so he's got a cold. He just wants to go home and sleep, but now the big boss wants to use his apartment. Again, I'm thinking Neil Simon comedy. This is what it is to me. So he offers him 2 tickets to see The Music Man. Go see that while I use your apartment. He invites the Shirley MacLaine character, the elevator lady, to go with him, which she agrees to. She's going to be late because she's got to meet a friend for drinks first, right, before she goes. And what do you know? The friend for drinks is the CEO.
The big boss.
The big boss, yeah, the big boss, who is planning on using his apartment tonight with her. Mm-hmm. That turn blew my mind. I should have seen it coming. I mean, it is so obvious, really, right? Mm-hmm. That's what has to happen. But from this point of the film, I really don't think I found the movie more heartbreaking than hilarious.
Oh,
these are
absolutely.
People fumbling in the dark to find purpose and meaning and love and acceptance, and none of them are really finding any of it. And it is that deep. Mm-hmm. And this is what I was going to say to you, where you say Billy Wilder his style is not as prevalent for, like, you can't say, oh, you're doing Billy Wilder.
Right.
Like, that, it doesn't work like you say, oh, that's Hitchcockian.
Mm-hmm.
Wes Anderson does The Apartment in just about every film that he does. You put funny characters or quirky characters in bizarre situations, and you laugh, but then you find out they have a past and they have a purpose. Royal Tenenbaums is a movie about a deadbeat dad trying to connect with his family after years of not being there, and then deciding, oh wait, I actually love them, and it's too late.
Yeah.
That's tragedy. It's not comedy, and yet Royal Tenenbaums is going to be in the comedy section at your local video store. That's where it's going to be, or on your Netflix in this case.
Yeah, all the elevator assistants in the video store.
Exactly. But I'm saying that is kind of what The Apartment pulls here to me.
And what made that turn work so well is that when he's going up to talk to Fred McMurray, the big boss, Sheldrick, and he's going back down, and he's talking to McLean, that is when he is asserting himself to try to make his life better. Mm-hmm. He asks her out, and this is not for anything else besides, like, I want to have a happier life, and going out with you can do that. And then you kind of see that it's not that simple, because nothing in this movie is that simple. You can't just get the one thing and you're happy, because everyone has years of life connected to them, and everyone has difficulties.
You have to struggle. You're going to struggle. That's life.
So many people struggle, except it feels like for these people who keep hurting him. Like, everyone's having an affair. Like, everyone's having an affair with no worry or even guilt about what they're doing, and especially no guilt towards Cece, because he's just...
He's a schmuck.
He owns the key.
He's literally called a schmuck by his friends behind his... I keep saying friends. Yeah. They're not his friends. He doesn't actually have a friend in this movie, except for maybe the neighbor.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, exactly. So they end up going to the apartment. Sheldrick, who's the big boss, and the Shirley MacLaine... I keep saying the Shirley MacLaine character. There's always a character that I'm just going to say the actress's name.
I do that for every movie.
Well, at least I'm not saying Warren Beatty's sister.
Yes.
Shirley MacLaine character, who once you find out that Sheldrick is telling her he's going to leave his wife and all this stuff, and he's going to sleep with her. He's just saying this to sleep with her, right? Well, there ends up being an office party where you find that there is another another receptionist that worked under Sheldrick who he was saying the same things to. So the Shirley MacLaine character actually believes he's going to leave his wife, and then she hears, oh wait, someone else he's been saying this to someone else, right? Again, I'm pretty sure people are laughing still at this film. I don't know.
At that point, I don't think so.
The movie, it really does turn. It kind of, to me, I stopped finding it funny. Mm-hmm. And really, I was able to see the tragedy of it. She loves him. And she can't help that she loves him because people can't help their feelings. They can't change the way they feel. They know they shouldn't feel a certain way, but they're going to feel that way.
And that, to me, brilliantly kind of divides the characters. When you have all these bosses, including Sheldrake and these other bosses, they don't care about people. They don't care about Baxter. They're only using the approach as a carrot on a string.
Let's refer to him as C.C. Baxter just for... Because
Sure.
we've referred to him as C.C., we refer to him as Baxter. C.C. Baxter, it's the same person.
Right, Jack Lemmon.
Yeah.
And they just don't have the empathy that you see C.C. Baxter and Fran, played by Shirley MacLaine, they have. They hurt because they care.
Yeah.
Life would be easier if they didn't care. Mm-hmm. But they have to care. And that is humanity.
Yes. So at this night of the office Christmas party, C.C. Baxter's able to put together that because she left behind a little mirror in his apartment, or the girl left behind. He didn't know who it was, but he sees her use the same mirror at the Christmas party, and then he realizes that she's the one that he was bringing. This crushes him. So he goes out on Christmas Eve. He's out because Sheldrick has taken Fran to his apartment, so he can't go home anyway. He can't go home on Christmas Eve, and he meets the typical like bimbo that you see. You know, there's not much to the character. She's an archetype, but you meet. He's out, but he's fine. He's reaching in the dark. He meets this blonde at a bar on Christmas Eve while he's drunk. They dance in past closing time. They're being thrown out, and he takes her home. Finally, he's going to take a girl home and be like them. He's going to sleep with this total stranger who's married. She is married, and that's talked about. And she talks about her husband like he wouldn't care, but he would, obviously. And then when he returns to his apartment, he sees that Fran has taken his sleeping pills and is overdosed in the back bedroom. She's still alive. He then has to improvise, right? And this is, of course, extraordinarily serious, and also quite controversial, maybe. For this time period.
Yeah.
Holy shit! I was freaking out watching the film. Fran's going to kill herself. What?
Yeah. Because this is still, like I said, Wilder works within the Hollywood system and uses... He's almost sneaking in reality to what can often be a very artificial framework. Mm-hmm. And at this point now, this is the 60s. This is kind of when Hollywood is shifting. But this is still a Hollywood movie. And you do have a suicide attempt, and it is treated it's in a scary moment, but it's also in a way where other characters comment on it in an irregular way, and it's up to her to kind of say, I did this thing.
Yeah.
Don't try to just tell me to chin up and get better.
Yeah, which they try to do once they're able to recover. The neighbor is a doctor.
Yes.
And he thinks that she's overdosed because she's all torn up over him because he sees him bring women home, or he thinks he's bringing women home all the time. And the scene to get her to revive her is violent. I mean, it's real. It's visceral. They throw her in the bathtub, her total unconscious body, turn it on. The doctor screams at him to get coffee on. He's in there. He's making her vomit. You hear her vomiting. She's passed out. He's basically pouring coffee down her throat to wake her up with the caffeine. And the doctor's just smacking the shit out of her to keep her awake. Because if she falls asleep, she's not going to wake up. Or she may not wake up. Mm-hmm. He has to do this for like a couple. They mentioned 2 hours at least before they can let her sleep.
Yeah.
And metabolize it and say she's going to wake up the worst headache ever. Then she wakes up from that, and it's really weird because they're being romantic with each other, but no one is really coping with the fact that this woman has tried to kill herself, and because no one knows how do you emote after that, right?
Right.
And there are some moments of levity. I love how he cooks her, Jack Lemmon, C.C. Baxter cooks her dinner and strains the spaghetti with a tennis racket. That's hysterical.
It's an iconic thing from the movie. Yes, it's so wonderful.
And that's what a bachelor does, right? I'm sure his oven mitts are socks. So you have these moments of levity, which is only existing because if we didn't, we would have to cry about life.
And the way we're going to jump a little further in the film, at one point he talks to her about how he tried to kill himself. And the way Jack Lemmon plays that, because when I was watching it again this time, I was like, is Jack Lemmon being too big at the beginning? Because it's Jack Lemmon, he's going to be twitchy.
But I don't think he does.
No, but the way he tells that story is so brilliant because he's doing it as a very hostly guy. He's walking around the apartment, making sure she's okay, while he's telling a story about how he's sitting in his car with a gun and he doesn't know where to point it.
Yeah,
and it's such a dark thing, but he's saying it with a smile as a way of like being sympathetic,
right,
and showing an understanding that I'm also lost in this world.
Yeah, that scene was absolutely captivating without being too on the nose and without being too droll, without being too nothing romanticized about it. Jack Lemmon, C.C. Baxter just tells the story about he didn't know where to point a gun. Do you point it at your temple? Do you stick the gun in your mouth? And then a cop taps on the car and startles him. And he ends up shooting himself in the leg, which again, this is Wes Anderson to me. This is what Wes Anderson is doing. It's funny that he ends up shooting himself in the leg, right? You almost forget that gun was there for him to kill himself. That right?
Well, it's the line from Woody Allen's Crimes and Misdemeanors. Comedy is tragedy plus time.
Yeah, exactly. Again, the characters. There's this. I'm telling you, I couldn't help but feel this flow of human emotion, which was these people just struggling to live at this time of year and wanting warmth and wanting compassion around Christmas time, but never able to feel comfortable in their own skin. There's so much inherent tragedy without being too on the nose about it, and never exploiting it. It just is.
Right.
I mean, everyone laughs, everyone cries, everyone loves the wrong person. The movie is telling you it's okay to be you, and it's okay to struggle. Right? It doesn't sugarcoat anything. There are good guys and bad guys. There are people that will try to take advantage of you, and there are people that are actually your friends. Unfortunately, because life is this way sometimes, they may not always be the people that we love. Which gets kind of into this romance where he is, of course, C.C. Baxter is, of course, in love with Fran, who is still in love with Sheldrick. I should point out that he didn't get her a Christmas present. Fran got Sheldrick a Christmas present, and he gave her $100. And she makes a reference to... Once she gets the $100, she just drops her clothes and say, "Why don't I just give you what you paid for?" She feels like a whore. Right? And she feels dirty and she feels cheap, but yet she still loves him.
And as we're going to go into the very end of the film now, what I think is so incredible, and this is just, again, Wilder at his very best structurally, because once again, he wrote the screenplay, he directed this movie. This is a Billy Wilder movie. What is her turn? Because Sheldrick keeps doing these very kind of cold actions to her, but she's still there. Conscious of it, but she just can't help herself. It's when she finds out that C.C. Baxter has quit.
Yeah.
Once again, Sheldrick says he threw away the spare key. Give me your key back. At
this point, he's been promoted to literally the right
27th floor.
Man.
Yeah. Yep. And C.C. Baxter just finally goes, enough of this.
Yeah.
Gives him the key to the employee washroom. Says, "I'm out." Has no plans, but all he knows is he's going to get out of that building, he's going to get out of that apartment. And then when she hears about that, this wasn't an action for her. This wasn't an action as like a say anything declaration of love for her. It was him just going, life can be better than this.
That was a beautiful moment. I'm going to, I'll keep it secular, but I'll quote the Bible here because it applies so perfectly. Matthew chapter 16, verse 26, "What is a man profited if he shall gain the entire world but lose his soul?" And that to me was this moment, right? That was where we reached that top, and here you are, but what was it all for? Why at the end of the day? Like, why? And also, not really. It was not earned either. On the back end of this, you let people sleep in your apartment, and this is where you are. This is an example, unlike Ace in the Hole, for instance, where, in my opinion, where you did show cynicism. You can show the dark side, but there's still light. There's still hope.
But this isn't a cynical film.
No.
This is a sad film.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it has a very cynical message about the working man. I do think that is in there. And I don't think it's not the focus of the film, you're right. But the fact that there is a lot of time spent and the character of Fran is affected by the fact that she could not even be a receptionist. She could not fit into a working society, a working capitalist society, because she couldn't spell. She could type fast, but she couldn't spell. He gets a corner office not because he earned a corner office, and this is pointed out to the person next to him who's much older and says, "Why are you getting promoted? I'll still be here. I've been working here way longer than you."
Yeah.
To me, that is a very cynical message about, I don't know if it's about capitalism, but it's definitely about the workplace and about it needs to exist, or where's our contrast, right?
What's interesting about CC Baxter and Fran is that they want to kind of keep moving forward, not for like financial ambition. They don't want to have like big cars, big helms. They just kind of want to feel relevant.
Exactly.
And they want to kind of feel these connections that they have towards their fellow employees, towards the work they're doing. They want to have the feeling that they are accomplishing something.
Yeah.
And the people who have that don't respect it.
No, they don't. And Sheldrick won't even come visit her, of course, on Christmas Day, because this is C.C. Baxter tries to get Sheldrick to come over, very selfless of him, because, again, he loves Fran.
Yeah.
But he wants Sheldrick to come over and at least say something to her, because she just tried to kill herself over him. But he can't make it, of course, because we see him in his opulence, in a big house with all these presents, with his children and his actual wife. So, of course, he can't break away, right? So yeah, well, that's pretty cynical too, I guess. But at the same, regardless, I can argue that. But so they start playing a gin rummy game, and they're not able to finish that game. And in the end,
we went to the very last scene.
Yeah, I think we can jump that. I wouldn't want to spoil too much that's in the gaps because it's all so wonderful.
Yeah,
and in case you haven't seen, well, we spoil so many films, but this one I haven't seen.
We talk about the film in a way that we want to talk about the whole film in an essay-like format to kind of talk about why the entire piece of art works.
Yes.
Which is why we talk about the entire story, including the endings. And I knew the last line of this film.
Yeah.
I knew what the last moment was, because I'd seen this before. I think maybe the last line had already been spoiled at that point for me. I'm not sure. But watching it again, I almost started crying.
Yeah.
Because it's just a beautiful moment when he's packing up.
Tell us the last line. Go, do it.
She has heard the news. She's at his apartment. She sees the boxes.
The news that he's quit.
Yeah. She asks where the cards are. She was very worried about him because she heard a sound in the hallway. And she thought it was a gun, but it was him popping a champagne, that he was free from it all. And she immediately asked how his knee was, because she assumed he probably shot himself in the knee again. Exactly. He pours 2 glasses of champagne. She ignores it. She's dealing the cards. They cut the cards, and he just keeps talking about, "I love you. I adore you. You mean the world to me." And she says, "Shut up and deal."
Yes, which I think is that if she says, I mean, this is like this is like the Han Solo moment where "I love you, I know." This is different. I don't know if they're going to end up together.
No.
And part of me almost feels like they won't. I don't know that, But this is the way the world works, okay? And also, she never says that she loves him. We heard she was, I mean, she's changing, obviously, but, I mean, you can't help who you love. That's I think that's a theme or something that's going on here.
I think what matters the most to me in these final moments is that they both have someone to care for who cares for them back.
They both found each other, and in that, they feel validated.
Yes.
And that, to me, is wonderful. I've said this before to you. I know when we're not doing this podcast, I've said that anytime you have tragedy in film, or any film that focuses, like it's a drama or tragedy, it always works better and will always work better or if you have humor in it. You have to have humor to tie the pieces together, because the humans, that makes us human. Mm-hmm. Humans need to laugh. When you have moments like the straining of the spaghetti, when you have the shut up and deal, when you have those type of moments, that's the humanity coming through. That's the beacon of hope in the film. Anytime a movie or film or play or whatever is just tragedy, for tragedy's sake, it never works for me. It always comes off as baloney. Mm-hmm. This is a film that effectively used comedy in order to actually prop up their through line, which is quite sad.
Yes.
Quite sad. This film won Best Picture.
It did.
And it should have.
Yes.
Great film. And while in on Billy Wilder, the whole thing, watching all these films this time through, this is my favorite film of them all.
It is such an emotional movie for me. I think I still like Sunset Boulevard more. But this movie is just, it needs to be seen by everyone. And it's a movie that will keep hitting you at different ages. And it will just keep affecting you.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful story. And so many films owe tribute to this movie.
Yeah.
It's what you want. Because I think romantic comedy is, when it's done right, my favorite genre, but it's never done right because you actually have to include romance and comedy. Yeah. And that really seems to not be the case.
It seems pretentious what you just said, but it's true.
You need to care and you need to laugh.
Yeah. And you do here. I mean, this, and it's you care because you do laugh. I mean, yeah, it's like what you just said. I mean, that's what pulls me in. And I have to say, I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you agree? Like Wes Anderson, sort of like maybe influenced by that?
Sure.
Yeah, it was something I was struck with during the film.
Well, I was looking at some of just right now while we're talking. What are some of my favorite films? And a lot of them are in the romantic comedy genre, but they should almost be called romantic comedy tragedies because they include films like The Not Will Ferrell Kicking and Screaming, Arthur, Chungking Express, Once. These are all beautiful films.
Once, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, where you have people making a really like pure connection. You're amazed it's just captured on film. I know they're fictional characters, but it's like you captured something beautiful here.
I think that's important. You have to stop and say, but they're fictional characters with The Apartment, right?
Sure.
Because they're so fully realized and so human with actual human problems. It's a story about us. Mm-hmm. That's The Apartment. It could be anyone. That's what I think makes the film work so well. And none of the empathy, particularly when she, tries to kill herself, none of the empathy comes off artificial. Mm-hmm. None of it. It all seems like it's real. It's people. It's just people.
And in our next episode, which will be our bonus episode where we wrap up Billy Wilder, we'll talk more about this, but I think part of what makes Billy Wilder one of the greats is that, he wrote every one of the screenplays we talked about in these 5. He is so brilliant at structuring these kind of character moments. There is no contrived save the cat moment. You create sympathy for Norma Desmond, for Fran, for Baxter, for Ninotchka in a different way each time that is true to the character and true to the story and is seamlessly structured.
Yeah, and you can't help but be true when you're just interested in telling stories about, when you're good at it, obviously, mm-hmm. but when you're so interested in telling the stories about the human condition, so to speak, mm-hmm. the empathy writes itself, and he's so good at channeling that. Particularly in the apartment in Sunset Boulevard in Ninotchka.
Something like that.
And
he's in the hole.
I'm not going to say it, but I still understood. I mean, that is still a very human story. Like, I get that. I mean, if you listen to the Ace in the Hole podcast, you know that Austin liked it and I didn't. But I still saw it there. The imprint is clear. He's interested in us and studying us. It's a character study about everyone. It's really kind of bizarre. But the apartment doesn't rely on quirkiness to make you laugh like a Wes Anderson film. It's humans.
Yeah.
And a lot of times humans getting shit on, right? And that's life.
Yeah.
So, yeah. One of those films, you cannot tell the history of cinema without mentioning The Apartment. Of course, Sunset Like It Hot. There's some Like It Hot and Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Like It Hot.
Oh, there's a YouTube mashup.
Oh, wow, that's incredible. Someone needs to make that film.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, amazing.
So this is going to, as our final film for the Billy Wilder Take 5. On Wednesday, we are going to do, like we did for Robert De Niro, just a very casual talk about the 5 films one last time, talk about films that we did not cover, and I'm sure I will be tempted a year or two from now to do a Billy Wilder Part 2, because he's that good.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that for sure.
And so you can catch that on Wednesday, and then the next Friday, we'll start number 1 of our next person, which we will reveal on the wrap-up episode. So get excited for that. You can catch all of our previous episodes at theartimmortal.com. We would love us if you can leave us an iTunes review, help people find our show. You can leave a comment at theartimmortal.com, or if you have just too long of a comment to put on a simple comment box, even though I don't think it has a limit, you can email us at letstake5@theartimmortal.com. You can follow us on Twitter, where I tend to retweet relevant things of movies that we have covered, at The Immortals Pod, which is connection to my other podcast on The Art Immortal called The Immortals. See, it all ties together. I say the word immortal a million times in this outro.
Yeah, what are you doing on The Immortals?
I do so many things. And that's a podcast where myself and 4 of my friends, we are immortal beings who are cursed to cover the 1001 movies, albums, food, songs, children's books, and TV shows that you must consume before you die. And this week, we covered Metropolis. Yep. The silent film Metropolis.
We record these in advance. I think that's fair to say.
But I'm pretty sure I'm right. Okay. So that came out yesterday.
I was like, surely he didn't forget the film he saw last week.
Oh, right. The future.
Yeah, you want to catch me, you can check me out on YouTube. My YouTube channel is Constant Diversion, YouTube/Constant Diversion. And on there, I critique video games. And I twirl my handlebar mustache and get very aesthete about it. I'm a video game aesthete.
And they are extremely well edited and well narrated and really well done. So even if you have not seen the games they're covering, I would recommend watch them just for the artistry alone.
And if you haven't played them either.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen them or played them.
You could just be watching in the background like I tend to do.
I understand the crossover appeal going from movies to video games is certainly not as big as video games to movies. But yeah, you might be interested, sure.
Video games are becoming more and more cinematic.
No, I get that, but I'm assuming everyone likes movies.
Yes.
Not everyone likes video games.
But this is the channel to convert you.
Well, indeed.
So, once again, thank you all for listening. We will catch you on Wednesday for the bonus episode and Friday for our regular episode. My name is Austin.
My name is Eric.
Goodbye, everyone.
Until next time. Bye-bye.
What about Mr. Sheldrake?
We send him a fruitcake every Christmas. Cut.
I love you, Miss Kubelik.
3. Queen.
Did you hear what I said, Miss Kubelik? I absolutely adore you.
Shut up and deal.